Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at the top 5 most popular webcams under $50. The process of selecting which webcams I'm testing today was simple. I went on Amazon, set a budget of $0 to $50 in the webcam category, and I picked the top 5 with the most reviews. I did, however, make sure to choose only one option per manufacturer. So what we'll do today is take a look at each webcam in 3 different lighting scenarios. First with good light, then in low light, and finally using RGB lighting to see how they each render color. Lastly, we'll listen to the built-in microphones of each camera. Stick around to the end of the video. I'll also be taking a look at a 6th bonus webcam that fell just over that $50 budget, but you're not going to want to miss it. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So first up is the ToLuLu webcam, and I could not find a model number of this webcam on Amazon. It just describes it as the 1080p version. So this is the ToLuLu 1080p camera. Here's the specs on it. It claims 1080p resolution, 30 frames per second, fixed focus. That means there's no autofocus on it, and a field of view of 110 degrees. We'll get into that a little bit, but some of these cameras don't seem quite accurate in terms of their field of view, but they claim 110 degrees. They claim a stereo microphone, and the price of this is a paltry $20. So what do you get for $20? Let's check it out. Okay, so the first comparison here is in good light. So this is kind of best case scenario for all of these cameras, and I'm noticing it is very wide. The 110 degrees, may be accurate. We can see guitar to guitar over here, which normally in my room I am not able to see these guitars. So it is fixed focus, so I'm doing a focus test there, bringing it right up to the camera. It doesn't work. Resolution is good, the camera looks okay. It looks good in this light. But for the most part, it is fixed focus, and that's gonna be the same for all of these cameras. And so what you'll find is that pretty much everything is in focus the whole time. Okay, so next up is low light, and this is just with a single lamp lit in the room and none of my other lights. So it's just a regular tungsten light, and this is doing a pretty good job. It's definitely noisy. It's extremely noisy everywhere in the picture, which would be problematic if you're dealing with kind of bandwidth concerns. When you have a lot of noise like that, it can be an issue. Some of the softwares might employ some smoothing that would take that away. I'm testing the frame rate here, waving. It's not too bad, but the fingers are blurring. That's normal in low light situations for kind of cheap cameras like this. So yeah, it's still very sharp, even in low light, which I like, but it is extremely noisy. Okay, so next is the gamer lights, and wow. So the background here is supposed to be green, and then around that gray panel is supposed to be a blue light. And so this is a test, just seeing how it renders those lights, and then particularly how does it render skin tones. So I'm still fairly well lit in this comparison with my key light in the daylight scenario, and so ideally the skin tone should look pretty good here, but it's super red. Depending on the color of your background, if you're trying to do something like this with RGB, this may not be the best option for you. And now let's go ahead and check out the audio test. This is an audio test of the ToLuLu webcam. Checking 1 2, 1 2 3. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Alright, so you just heard the ToLuLu microphone that's built into the webcam, and it was pretty muffled. Decent level, it's okay, but yeah, definitely sounds kind of like you're talking through a cardboard box a little bit with that one. So built-in webcam microphones, I don't recommend them almost ever. They're a little bit too far away in most scenarios, and they're usually really small microphones because I just try to jam them in there. So not necessarily recommended, but we're gonna test them today anyway. Next, we're gonna jump into our next cheapest option, which is the eMeet C960. Now the eMeet C960, very similar specs to the ToLuLu. It's 1080p, 30 frames per second. It's a fixed focus. And this claims to be 90 degrees field of view. And you'll understand in a second why I question that. This does have a stereo microphone, and it came in at just $29. So let's get into the good light test. Wow, we are super wide here. Like the immediate impression is like none of these other ones can I see my floor. None of the other ones do I see my armrests in my chair. You see the most of the two guitars on the far outsides. What's really interesting about this webcam is instead of doing a fisheye to get that super wide angle, so it's kind of just doing a regular wide angle. So stuff on the outside is going to look larger than it really is, and stuff right in the middle is going to feel smaller than it is. So if you're just kind of sitting in the middle, shouldn't be a huge deal, but it will make the room look a little bit like Alice in Wonderland, potentially, depending on what you have on your walls. It's not too bad here. I don't mind it. It's kind of shocking how much was in frame when I was doing this test. I actually had to move things out of the way, move them up into my room. I have a really small room here, so I had light stands and things that suddenly you could see that you couldn't see in the other camera tests. So really interesting camera so far. Let's go ahead now and jump into the low light test. Okay, so low light performance, it's less noisy than the ToLuLu was. It's still a little bit noisy, but less bright for sure. The ToLuLu seemed like it was doing a lot of over brightening and over sharpening that was causing the noise, maybe jumping the ISO super high artificially. This is not doing it, but it looks okay. You know, honestly, for the single lamp that's in the room, it was pretty dark. Yeah, frame rate looks good here. Able to keep the fingers, it's not blurring out too hard, so not so bad. So let's jump now into the gamer lights and see how it handled that. Oh my, okay, so similar situation as the ToLuLu, where we are getting super red skin tones. It's doing a decent job on the background of showing the green. You can see that there's blue around the gray, which I think was a little bit blown out on the last one. But skin tones are very unpleasant here. Very red, which is not ideal. So not horrible. No, it's pretty bad. But nice and sharp in the background. Look at the leaves there on the plant. You can really see all the detail there still. So that is the gamer test, and now we're going to go ahead and jump over to the audio test. Let's take a listen.
This is an audio test of the eMeet C960. Checking 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
All right, so that was the audio test of the eMeet C960, and that sounded pretty good. That's honestly one of the best webcam microphones that I've heard. You can tell in the build quality of this that it's much heavier, it's much larger than any of the other options that we're testing today, and the outside areas, outside of the lens, seemed very large. So I had high hopes. I thought almost it might have a speaker or something like that in there, but it's just the microphones. And they did a good job. They sound good. So pretty impressed with that. So that was the eMeet C960. Next, we're going to jump into the Logitech C270. So Logitech C270 is definitely the oldest model that we are testing today. It's been around forever, and they just keep selling it because I guess people keep buying it, and it's very low price. So the resolution on this one is 720. This is the only non-1080 webcam we'll be testing today. Everything else, 30 frames per second. It's also fixed focus, so no autofocus here. The field of view is 55 degrees, so it's quite a bit less than the 110 and the 90 degrees of the last two. Mono microphone, and this comes in right now at $29. So let's jump in right now and see the C270 in good light. And oh my gosh, yeah, right off the bat, that is shocking to see when you compare it to where we just came from. This says 55 degrees, and man, it is tight. This looks cropped. I'll be honest, when I was testing it for the first time, I thought, wow, something must be wrong. I must have a setting wrong. I tried to open Logitune, which is Logitech software, to adjust things, and sometimes you can adjust the field of view, but this is it. So yeah, look, cannot see my hands there when I reach out. But anyway, in terms of the crop factor, maybe that's what you prefer, where you want to mount the camera is pretty far away, so you want something that's a little narrower, so this could work out. So let's just talk about the video quality. So this is 720, and you can tell right away that it's just a little less crisp. If you look in the background, there's just a little less detail. Even in the foreground, just detail in terms of my skin, my beard, you're just losing a lot of that. But skin tones are good here in the good light. You know, it's a little soft, but other than that, it looks okay. And with that, let's go ahead and see how it performs in low light. All right, so low light, I can already tell the frame rate has dropped substantially. So in what it's trying to do, instead of being super noisy like the first option was, is it's trying to just drop that frame rate to up the brightness. And it does a good job. It's relatively well lit now, even though it's pretty dark in the room. But you can see in a little bit here when I do the handshake that it's going to be pretty blurry. So let's check that out right now. Yeah, so my hand is just all motion blur there. And that's because it's lowering the frame rate considerably to up the light. So let's see how it does in the gaming light. Okay, actually excellent. So this is what we're looking for. We're looking for that super deep green in the background. We're still seeing the blue outline of that gray panel in the background, but now the skin tones are not red. They're actually pretty accurate. And you can see that like that. You can see the with the color tones on that remote. Those are all looking pretty good. You can still see white on there, and it looks white. So yeah, the skin tones here are looking pretty good. Pretty happy with this test. And actually right there at the end, you saw when I put the hand up close to the frame that it must have grabbed white balance from my hand, totally shifted the white balance in the frame. So that was an interesting thing. Just something to note there that it was pretty quick to grab a different white balance. And now let's check out the audio test of the Logitech C270.
This is an audio test of the Logitech C270 webcam. Checking 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Okay, so yeah, that sounded pretty good. Sounds pretty reasonably rich for being distant and being in a webcam. Not quite as good as the eMeet, but certainly a lot better than the ToLuLu, in my opinion. So that was the Logitech C270. Next, we're going to jump into the Amcrest AWC201-B. That is a mouthful. That is not an easy model number to read. Let's check out, I'm just going to call it the Amcrest from now on. So the Amcrest is a 1080p resolution, 30 frames per second. It's a fixed focus. This claims to have a 70-degree field of view and stereo microphones, and it comes in at $30. Let's check it out in good light. All right, so here it is in good light, and my immediate impression is this is not 70 degrees. This is maybe the widest so far. You can see the entirety of the guitar on the far left, which is interesting. And if you compare this to the others, what I'm noticing is it's very high contrast. So we're losing a lot of the details in the background. Everything's kind of becoming almost painterly, where it's either just like a flat color. Like if you look at the guitar on the left, that's a brown guitar. It pretty much just looks black there. So it's really darkening the details. The shadow detail is pretty much gone, totally squashed. And it's also doing the same thing on the highlights. So the highlights look like they're very much becoming overblown on my face, especially if you look at my left cheek, left side of my face where my key light was set up. It's definitely a little bit overly bright, just causing it to be a little bit blown out there. And so yeah, very high contrast camera. Maybe that's what you're going for. Maybe you like that. But that's the first things that I'm noticing here. It's also another fisheye lens. So again, you can see my background with the wood panels are clearly bending kind of in the frame here. And yeah, you can see super wide. So that's a good light, and let's head into low light and see how it does. All right, so here we are in low light, and the contrast just seems to be even more overdone here. It's doing a pretty good job here, though, of matching the brightness of the last one. So it's definitely got a preset brightness that it prefers, and it's trying to hit that mark, that exposure. And it's doing it in sacrifice here, I believe, of the frame rate. So let's check out the wave test, and yeah, there you go. So the frame rate, not looking so great. Not a huge deal. I don't mind cameras that sacrifice frame rate for brightness over making it super noisy. That usually people sitting in front of a camera on video conferencing aren't moving a whole lot. That's something that doesn't really bother a lot of people. So I prefer to see that over the noisiness. So yeah, not too bad performance here in low light. Let's go ahead now and see how it rendered colors in the gaming light setup. Oh boy. Okay, so that is, yeah, my face says it all there. That's the worst of all. You can tell that is green, I think, based on like maybe the plants, but the plant was already green to begin with. But look at that. I mean, you can totally tell in that remote control it's supposed to be white. It's super red. So this is probably the worst that we've seen so far of the 4 that we've checked out. Suddenly you can see that the guitar on the left is brown. So that's interesting. That I guess that's just the red kind of overtones that are coming through here when you're lighting it green. But suddenly you see that detail back there. But yeah, not great performance. Again, if you're not doing RGB in your background, not going to make a huge difference to you, but wanted to test it out anyway. Now let's go ahead and shift over to the audio test of the Amcrest. This is an
audio test of the Amcrest AWC201.
Okay, so I'm just gonna stop it right there because I literally can't hear anything, and that is how it was recorded. That is how quiet that microphone is. I would call that absolutely 100% unusable. It's not borderline unusable, it's absolutely unusable. So I'm gonna go ahead and crank it now and see what we hear when we crank it up, just so we can at least test it. So again, I am going to be in the software maxing out the gain here, and let's listen to what that sounds like.
This is an audio test of the Amcrest AWC201-B. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 3. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Okay, so you just listened to the Amcrest audio test when I boosted the gain. Again, totally unusable, so there's no point of you listening to this because I don't think you could use this in any software. But sounds very boxy, sounds kind of like the ToLuLu did at the beginning. I don't know what they're doing with their auto gain, their mic settings here, but it's not working at all, unfortunately. So that's a bummer. And last on our list here is the Nexigo N60. So this is a 1080p webcam, 30 frames per second, fixed focus, also 110-degree field of view, so we'll check out how that compares to the ToLuLu that matched it. Claims to have a stereo microphone, and this came in, this is our highest priced option, but still only $34, so extremely affordable webcams that we're testing here today. Let's go ahead and open it up and check out the good light test. Okay, so again, we're getting the fisheye lens. This is actually very similar in terms of the lens from the Amcrest and the ToLuLu. When you look at the field of view, you can maybe a little bit narrower here, but obviously the background you can see is curved. Pretty sharp. This is actually a really sharp webcam, maybe a little bit overly sharpened. That might not be your cup of tea if you want to like hide flaws or something like that when you're on video conferencing. Might not be the best option for you, but you know, there's always like those beauty filters that smooth everything out. So I would prefer a webcam starting sharp so that you can always turn those things on. But you can see just in the light reflecting in my eye that it's really, really, really over sharpening it here. So look at the detail on the plants, look at the detail on the light in the background. Super sharp, you can almost see the wood grains in the background. So everything's in focus, and that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and check it out in low light. Okay, so here we are in low light, and same thing. It is super sharp. That is really interesting. This is definitely the sharpest of the cameras that we've tested today. I think it's doing a pretty good job here. We'll have to check out the frame rate in a moment, but it does not look very noisy. It actually looks pretty clean, especially I check out the corners on the white wall to usually see where that noise comes in. So let's check out the frame rate when we do the wave test here. And yeah, it's not bad. You know, obviously it's motion blurring because I'm moving a lot, but yeah, that's really not bad. That's pretty good low light performance from this webcam. And next, let's check out how it did in rendering colors on the gamer lights. That is super green, which is honestly what it looked like in real life. So that did a really good job. You know, I'm looking pretty impressed in real life there too. The blue is a little bit hard to see, but the white balance is spot on. Like my skin tones still look really good. If you compare it to the first good light settings, it looks pretty close. So it's recognizing here what it needs to white balance for, and that it is the subject right in the front, and it's doing a good job. So really impressed with the color performance of this webcam in this scenario. Let's go ahead and jump in now to the audio test.
This is an audio test of the Nexigo N60 webcam. Checking 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
All right, so you just heard the Nexigo N60, and my immediate impression is that is the loudest of the microphone. So it's not all about volume, but it definitely helps to have something there so that you have something to work with, and that it did not sound good. So unlike the eMeet that I talked about before, sounding like pretty natural, that was the biggest and heaviest webcam. The Nexigo is super lightweight. So it's not necessarily small, but it's incredibly lightweight. And so I think that's where they skimped out, is the microphone. Honestly, everything else was looking pretty good about this webcam until we got to that audio test, and it sounded pretty bad. So I would not recommend using the built-in microphone for this webcam, but everything else was coming out looking pretty good.
Okay, so what did you think? Did any of these 5 stand out to you? Let me know in the comments below which was your favorite and why. And on your way down there, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more reviews and shootout videos like this. Now before I give you my opinion, let's check out one more bonus webcam, which is the Logitech C920. This webcam was just over the budget, but it's one of the most popular webcams, so I thought it would be helpful to take a look at it, just so we can compare it with these other cheaper options. So let's take a look.
Okay, so now for our bonus webcam, let's check out the Logitech C920. So the C920 comes in at 1080p, 30 frames per second. It's the only one that we've looked at so far that does have autofocus, so we'll check that out in a moment with that remote test. It claims to have a 78-degree field of view, stereo microphones. This is coming in right now at $64, so it's over that $50 budget. But if you look for refurbished options or used options on eBay, you can find these all the time. These are super popular webcams. They've been out forever, and so a lot of people have them, and anyone who's upgrading might be flipping one, so you can 100% get this under 50 bucks if you want it. So let's check out how it performs in comparison to the cheaper options that we've looked at today. So first of all, good light. Okay, so full disclosure, the Logitech C920 is my personal webcam that I've used for years now, and so I'm very, very familiar with what it looks like and what it looks like for in my room. And so, for example, this field of view looks exactly like what I want it to be because I set up this room pretty much to look exactly like this for this webcam. So check out the autofocus right there. This is the only one with autofocus. So when I had that remote up close to the screen, it was able to grab focus of it. If you're just doing video conferencing, the other fixed focus options should be fine. But if you're someone who wants to do something like a makeup tutorial, you're doing reviews, something like that for YouTube, and you want to be able to show something right in the camera, you want to show the detail, you want it to autofocus on that, certainly autofocus is helpful. There's also a downside to autofocus, to be honest. The C920, one of my gripes about it is that sometimes it hunts for focus, and sometimes it grabs focus on the wrong thing, and it takes it a minute. You really have to work at it and kind of give it you like move right into the middle of the camera to actually have it focus on your face. So especially in a low light situation, it can hunt for autofocus a little bit. So I'm definitely noticing this is the least contrasty of the ones we've looked at. So it's not trying to darken the shadows or over brighten. It's just kind of keeping everything just kind of nicely well exposed. To me, it's not the most flattering because of that. It looks pretty flat. So I kind of prefer the little bit more punchy color profiles of the other options we've looked at. But this is definitely the most natural in terms of what it looks like in real life. Let's go ahead and jump into the low light test. Okay, so here's a good example of the autofocus not necessarily grabbing, and then you can see it's hunting right there. So when it gets in low light, it's just not super sharp on my face. We definitely had sharper options with the fixed focus options before. So yeah, let's see how it grabs this focus of the remote. It grabs it there, and then as you move it back, it's really struggling in the lower light. Now, outside of focus, it's doing a pretty good job of exposing the scene pretty well. It's a little bit noisy. It's not doing too bad. The motion blur is not too bad here. But certainly the issue with low light with an autofocus situation is that if it doesn't know what to focus on, it's going to struggle a little bit. And we're seeing that here. Let's go ahead now and jump into the gamer lights. Okay, yeah, so this is pretty much exactly what I want it to look like as well. Similar to the Nexigo, it's exposing well for my face. It's white balancing to the correct thing. I'm not super red or pink. You can see the remote. It's going to focus on it here. But you can already tell that it's well lit, and wow, it just really won't focus. So it's just there it is. So that's good white balance on that. It's looking pretty good performance here. Now let's jump into the audio test of the C920.
This is an audio test of the Logitech C920 webcam. Checking 1 2 1 2 3. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Okay, you just listened to the audio test of the Logitech C920, and it sounds fine. It sounds like a webcam audio. I sound like a broken record. I don't recommend using webcam audio, but if you have to in a pinch, it sounds fine.
Welcome back. I hope that was as informative for you as it was for me. Overall, I came away really impressed with all of these webcams, especially for the money. Any of these would be an upgrade over most built-in laptop webcams, so this just proves that you don't have to spend a whole lot of money to get better video. Of the first 5, I came away most impressed with the Nexigo N60. The overall sharpness and color accuracy really stood out from the crowd as long as you're okay with the fisheye lens. My second favorite was the eMeet C960, which had a really unique field of view and a great sounding microphone. One thing that I should probably mention about the Logitech C920 is that you can control it with their optional Logitune software, which means it's the only camera in this video that gives you manual control over focus, zoom, color, contrast, and sharpness. I wanted to test everything in auto mode just to be fair to the rest of the webcams in this group, but having that additional control can really make a huge difference if you spend some time with it. So if you've got the budget for it, I do recommend the C920 in most use cases. Alright, that is it for this one. Let me know in the comments what stood out to you most in this video. Links for all 6 webcams can be found in the description. Hit that like button if you're feeling frisky, and we'll see you on the next one.